Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another member questions with Kyle. We're going to go over all the questions we had in the premium members group. We might share this later on YouTube for everyone as well. But welcome back, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries. Any general thoughts before we get into these specific questions and what's been going on around the world lately?
I mean, there's a lot happening, that's for sure. We were just chatting about the global liquidity issues and everything like that, and the US debt ceiling coming into play soon. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues happening at the moment. But in terms of like what's happening in the charting world at the moment, pretty much everybody is very heavily short on bonds and equities. So we can have a look at that because even though everybody's max short, almost at the same level as what they were in 2008, the market is continuing to rally.
Yes, yeah. Or talk of a $1 trillion coin and the debt ceiling and stuff like that, which we're going to get into as well. And some people have been asking about that, which is good to see. So I guess first up, some of the macro questions we had were about the stuff we just touched on. I think it's pretty interesting to see what's going on with the debt ceiling. This happens every few years, and it's a bit of a joke, and it finally gets sorted. And people are probably more panicky about the US defaulting on their debt than I think was it 2008 or 2000 in terms of those credit default swaps we touched on
Yeah.
last time as well. But it is funny how they come up with these solutions, and this was spoken about even 10 plus years ago. Like, we'll just print a platinum coin and we'll say that's worth $1 trillion, and that'll solve our issues and that kind of thing. So again, all these games they play. It's like moving those turtle shells with this funny money of, oh, we're not doing bailouts, we're not printing more money, we've just decided that this coin we've created is going to be worth $1 trillion. Yeah.
Oh god. I guess they're sort of like the tether for the crypto industry, right?
Yeah,
What's that? We
exactly.
need some more capital. Let's go.
Another thing in terms of that realm, someone was messaging me. Probably saw our Aussie viewers. Binance Australia got debanked or said they're no longer going to be able to do deposits and withdrawals. They're having trouble finding a banking partner. So I've reached out to them and haven't heard back specifically. But something we spoke about a few months ago that was in the news a lot was this Operation Choke Point 2.0.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's been any specific regulatory changes or rule changes. It's just kind of this world we live in where banks can decide we're not going to bank crypto anymore. And again, something I think we touched on in the last member questions was this concentration of power. JP Morgan
Mhm.
buys these regional banks out um, as they go under. And then if we end up with just these big players, it becomes very, very easy for them to say, no, we're not going to deal with crypto businesses or exchanges or anything. So have you read or seen anything else in that line of thought?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much the Obama administration's playbook being enacted against price to Joe Biden. But
Mm.
I just feel like, since FTX went under and they were so closely associated with the Democrats and everything like that, that the elites of the world have sort of just had it in for Binance ever since. And they're going to do everything that they possibly can to try and make their life as hard as possible. And that's why you see Binance now withdrawing from Canada. They're obviously getting kicked out of the US, and now they're slowly shutting down in Australia. Now the banking services just being cut off overnight. Now
Yeah.
Westpac are refusing to let their customers transfer any money at all to Binance. It's like, okay, what's going on? Who's pulling the strings behind the scenes to force all these things to happen? So I think what it might end up doing is actually balance out the industry a little bit because Binance just have too much power now since FTX went under. They've got all the volume,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll see FTX 2.0 pop back up or something like that, and it starts to even out a little bit more next year. And Binance might focus more on either something like Europe and Africa and Asia, those sort of areas in the Middle East for their services, and then we get some other exchanges in the West. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to accelerate their global footprint into other regions as well to get away from the West. FTX 2.0, you mentioned, that's been one of the recovery plans that's been floated. I haven't heard anything more specifically, but that did actually work well back in the day for Bitfinex when they got
Mm.
hacked. I think it was 40% haircut that everyone took, and then we got these IOU tokens that gradually got paid back over time. But whether or not
Yeah,
people
I
would
was reading
trust,
about that just before, actually.
yeah, I don't know whether or not people would trust FTX again, or if they've got the best trading charts still and features and indexes, whatever. Maybe people do go back there, but anyway, it's going to be a long, drawn out process still to see what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be really interesting. So I read that just earlier today. I read that it only took Bitfinex a year to pay everybody back. who held the debt tokens for the full year, they got fully refunded the 40%.
Yeah, okay. I thought it took longer than that off the top of my head, but maybe that's right.
That was what they said in the article anyway. That might
Okay.
not have been accurate. You know what journalism's like these days, but
Well, people panicked at the time and got rid of them when they were trading for like 30 cents on the dollar, thinking they're never going to get repaid. So a lot of people bought them for 30 cents on the dollar, and then it ends up getting paid in full. So not only did they get their money back, they tripled their investment on taking that risk. And so a similar thing could happen with people in the know that might say, yep, we're going to back FTX and blah, blah, blah. When people sell these IOU tokens, similar thing could happen. But a lot of if, buts, and maybes there.
there's two large parties at the moment buying pretty much all the FTX claims. I think they've bought like 85% between the two major parties. They've bought 85% of the FTX claims that have been up for sale so far. So I think there's a bit of a push towards what they've been saying in the legal updates and stuff like that anyway, is that they're most likely going to restart the exchange for all their billing and stuff like that. It's showing that. And so I think there's a few hedge funds that are buying as many claims as possible because they believe they're going to get a possibility for debt to equity swap. So it's almost like they're early investing into potentially being a share owner of the exchange in the future. So that's the theory.
So was that only US customers? I mean, I've seen a few people float the idea of buying claims off people, but I haven't seen anything concrete. Or have you heard of anyone doing that?
Yeah, it's happening. I think you can trade them at the moment on the Three Arrows Capital guys. So Suzu and Kyle, they have OpenX, I think it's called, and there's a couple of others as well.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. I wasn't sure if that was live or they were just talking about it still.
No, it's live now. Yeah.
And do you know what people are paying for these claims? Cents on the dollar, or?
I think for FTX it's like around 33% or 35% or something. But some of the other ones like Voyager and stuff like that, they're getting a fair bit more. I mean, I haven't really looked into it that much, but I just saw a graph that was showing the different levels of claims and how much people are paying percentages for them at the moment on OpenX.
Interesting. Something people might want to look into as well, or read more up on at least. You had a chart on liquidity you mentioned before. I know in China, I'm not sure if you want to bring that up and share your screen, but in China, they've had to increase QE, or there's been a rollover. I think it was 125 billion yuan. So there's still money coming into the system there, but other regions of the world, I think you mentioned before, inflation's still high, and a lot of these central banks are letting the bonds they got on their books, balance sheets run off and whatever. So it's drying up in other regions of the world.
100%. Let me just get that up. So is it showing my screen now?
Yep.
Yeah, so the blue line through here is the Bitcoin price. The green line is the US dollar liquidity. And the white line is the global liquidity data, right? And you can see since the COVID dump back here, global liquidity and USD liquidity just absolutely launched. I'll try and sharpen that up a little bit so you can see the bottom. Well, you can see the way they had it before when it was sort of drawn out a little bit more. It almost matches perfectly. Whoops, wrong one. It almost matches perfectly with the top, and then especially this cliff that kicked in around April 2022, that big sell-off, or I should say draw out of liquidity from the Fed that started happening in 2022. That was when QT started basically, right? And you see the strong downtrend through there perfectly matches our entire bear market. And now that we've bottomed here with global liquidity and US liquidity as well, we're starting to put in this round of bottoming pattern through here as well. So this is a really good chart. I think especially for a lot of the guys in the Nuggets news community that are more high time frame traders and investors. This is a really good chart, and you can get these indicators. It's just TED Talks Macro. He's a guy on Twitter. He's actually made these, so a bit of a shout out to him. And it's just net USD liquidity and major central bank assets. And you can just overlay them on your chart and have one of these and track it for yourself if you want to.
On TradingView there, guys, pause the video when Kyle showed you the names of those if you want to add those to your indicators. So really cool. So, liquidity, for those people that don't know what we're talking about, basically the amount of money available sloshing around the financial system globally, and then the US in green. So a little bit of divergence just in the past few weeks, but that has happened on other occasions as well, where we get a bit of a divergence, but generally the trend is still up over the past, say, year, for both of those since Bitcoin bottomed. So Bitcoin's always over the years been pretty tightly correlated to what's going on in terms of liquidity and interest rates. Having a bit of a pause of late, and probably that divergence in the US is mainly because of the bailouts for these regional banks they've had to do just recently.
Yeah, and in combination with what we were talking about before with the debt ceiling as well, because they actually have run out of money. So they're emptying money from the treasury at the moment. So that's actually, that started probably increased since April, pretty much the end of April. So, they're saying the Treasury is going to run out of money on June 1st now. We'll see what happens, but that's their expected date. It's going to be interesting to see how this ends up playing out. If we get an extra injection of capital, and then potentially that might be so large that it starts to drag the global liquidity up. But we are also starting to get reports that China are going to have to stimulate again soon. The bars that I have down the bottom here, that is the PBOC, so the Chinese government, People's Bank of China, liquidity injections. So those ones are sort of in a bar chart through there. So you can see when they're really pumping it and pushing it hard. And you can see all through this area of our chart here, that was when Bitcoin really started to pick up, was around the time that China was actually pushing pretty aggressively new liquidity into the market. So interesting to see that. But I think the most notable thing on here is the divergence. Bitcoin's going down since the middle of this range, end of April, and the US liquidity has been increasing quite aggressively, right? But the global liquidity is selling off. And what I was saying to Alex just before we jumped on the call is I think that's happening because inflation is actually starting to come down in the US a lot faster than it is in the rest of the world, like the UK and also in Europe. So they're having to do a little bit extra and harder tightening to get those inflation numbers down a little bit more aggressively than the US has to.
Yeah, I guess final point I'll make on this chart is just interesting to watch the China injections and the rest of the world liquidity. If we hear about how much gold they've been buying again in China, and gold and silver, I think they peeped their head out, or gold might have made a fractional new all-time high, and then it's pulled back, which is something we spoke about in our last video as well. But interesting to see if some of these other countries really start to favour Bitcoin more along with gold and stuff, if they know that the West is going to be cracking down on it.
I mean, I think the strongest argument for Bitcoin at the moment is, apart from the store of value, again, hedge against inflation and stuff like that, it's like, okay, if every government in the world is going to release a digital dollar and have digital cash, right? Central bank digital currencies, like, wouldn't it make sense for there be a shift to also have digital gold as a major player in the economy? Like, I feel like it's just natural evolution of everything going digital, right? So
I think another way for people to think about that, Bitcoin in its very early days, there was no way to get out into stablecoins until Tether came along, and now it's effectively like having government tethers everywhere. Everyone has a central bank digital currency, but it's that all that stuff just increased the popularity of Bitcoin because it meant that you could rotate into one or the other, or woke people up to the fact that, hey, this one is kind of freedom and this one is total control, and one goes up in price and the other one they're printing heaps of and it's stable. So it's good short term for my payments and day-to-day transactions maybe, and maybe we get told it's the only thing that we're allowed to use from now on to pay for things day-to-day. But then people are also going to want to get out and say, well, what can I save money in, and what do I have a bit more freedom over if I want to go overseas or send money to a friend or something else. So I think it just all drives to that education of what digital currencies are. So good long term.
Yeah, definitely agree. And it could end up becoming like, what we have is in like paper money cash now at the moment versus your digital online transactions, which, everything get tracked through your bank anyway.
Yeah.
So I think some of the hype around, central bank digital currency the extra control. They can still shut down your bank account at the moment if they want to anyway, but they just have a little bit extra, I think, is the scary part. But maybe Bitcoin ends up being like what we have today with cash, but you also have the side of it where it's also an inflation hedge as well. Imagine all the cash that people have, for doing cash jobs, tradies and stuff like that, or whatever it is. That money was actually increasing in value over time as well. It could end up being like that.
Yes. So gold and silver. Do you want to have a quick look at those?
So this is a gold chart at the moment, just rejected from all-time highs like we were expecting in the last video that we did. So it looks like it's going to get some support in this level here. We're already starting to see a bit of a bounce. I'll just zoom in a little bit on that. Might be a bit easier to see. So yeah, it looks like we're probably going to get a support resistance flip here. That would make the most sense. And then we end up ranging here for a while. And then, something will shift in the economy and, potentially has to do with interest rates coming down or liquidity starting to get injected back into the global economy, and gold eventually breaks out. And if it does break out, this has been quite a long accumulation so far, 1,010 days. We could end up getting some sort of a rally similar to this one that we had back there. I mean, that was a 50% push after a much longer consolidation, but I feel like this was the accumulation phase. That was 2,200 days. So we're sitting, just under half of that at the moment, but we haven't broken out yet. So that could continue to go on, easily another half a year or something like that in this consolidation. Then it breaks out. This looks like, a reaccumulation to me. I was literally just looking at the reaccumulation schematic. I might even have it. Here it is. Right?
Yes.
Perfect timing. But I don't know. That just looks like the exact same thing to me. So yeah, like the peaks almost match up perfectly as well. And you can see that at the moment, we're sort of in this area at the moment. And this is what you would call your LPS, which is your last point of supply before we break out. And then we have the sign of strength, and then it breaks out into its markup. So,
and I don't know if you can quickly bring up Bollinger Bands and RSI if you've got them handy. But this is just something for people at home that works on all time frames but carries more weight at these higher time frames. When we're looking to break through and make a new all-time high and we're overextended, I think this is kind of where we were when we recorded the last video. We're overextended on the RSI and we're in overbought territory. It just makes it a little bit harder to get that big push out. And so if we chop around for a while, it allows all these sort of momentum things to reset and then, build time for fresh money to come in if you want to think about what's happening in the real world, and then we start to push out, and then the news cycles all break, gold new all-time high, and it has that ability to get some legs and keep going rather than already being overstretched and then trying to break through.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, we had that big divergence in the RSI that we were talking about before into the all-time high. So yeah, like you were saying, need to see the Bollinger Bands come in, give a bit of a squeeze probably, and then it can get the push and the break to the upside, sort of like what we saw back here. Might be hanging around the bottom of the Bollinger Band as it comes in for a bit of a squeeze. You cross over the midline and then start to push into the upside of the band, get the break out of here. And you have a fresh swing high ready to go on the RSI as well. So that big momentum kick to the upside kicks in.
Do you want to have a look at a few of these gaming coins that people requested? And so Apple have put out their VR headset, and that's acting as a bit of a catalyst. And this is something that we see a lot in crypto, where it's a bit of a casino and people are jumping on meme coins and then, what's the next theme and whatnot. So hopefully this theme has a bit of legs, and it's been a few years now for a lot of these gaming and metaverse style coins, and we're going to see which ones have been building. And I think a lot of the good ones that we covered over the past few years have been still doing updates and building out things and probably increasing the number of active users and that. So yeah, I do hope that a lot of them have another rally. Axie Infinity, Red Fox is one people always ask about, Decentraland, Magic Sand. Yeah, so have a look at a few of these charts. But I do think that I haven't really changed my thoughts on them. I still think they're all pretty good projects. And if this is the catalyst to get more people into VR or whatnot, hopefully it is real and we get more players. Because I think with a lot of different sectors over the years, they have that first initial bubble and excitement, and then a few years later, it's like, okay, is this going to be real or not? And that's the point that a lot of these projects are at now for in crypto. If they don't start getting real users and revenues and whatnot, then a lot of them are going to bust and keep going down another 90%.
100% for sure. And to be honest, a lot of altcoins look like this, right? So it's not really like they're breaking out and doing their own type of thing. I believe that a lot of them are at the start of a accumulation schematic, right? So just this is the range high, this is the range low, this is our preliminary support, selling climax, automatic rally, right? And we're just coming back down to test the range low at the moment. So for me, especially after seeing, so this is Axie, right, that we were just talking about, that got listed on the Apple Store. It had a massive pump pretty much instantly, pumped 24% and saw a lot of selling. It's pretty much done a full retrace of that initial pump, right? So that's sort of telling me it's not ready to go just yet. Whoever's in control of this market, the whales, they want longer to accumulate, or they're just not really feeling the time in the cycle right now is ready for alts to play. But most likely what's really happening is whoever the group is, the hedge fund or, whales are in control of this market, they probably want to push the price below here, make everybody capitulate and sell out, freaking out, thinking that the market's going to do this again, right? But then what happens sometimes, and, honestly, it could do that. It could come down to $3 or something like that. $1, anything can happen. Right, we just have to sort of respond and understand how the ranges work. But a lot of these coins are looking similar. And what I want to be waiting for is a reclaim of this range low. So these 2 points here. And then usually you can get in as soon as it crosses back above if you want to. And then I just put my stop loss below here. Or, the way that's recommended through trading, through Wyckoff theory, is you get in on the test of the range low, but that doesn't always come in crypto, and sometimes it just goes like this, right? And then you sort of miss out. So I just try to average in the bottom half or the bottom quarter. So, we probably got the mid-range through here, right? And then half of that range is probably around, maybe a little bit lower, probably around there, right? So I would be looking after a sweep of the low here, be trying to catch in somewhere in this area. Under $7, I think, would be pretty nice. So I think that's the way to play Axie and a few others. And, it always can just roll over again. If, the project isn't doing anything and it's a weak project, it always, you have to be prepared for that. And that's why you don't ever oversize any one trade or one setup, because it can come back in like this and then bounce and then just roll over, right? And there's nothing you can do about that, right? In trading and in investing, we always have to understand that there's so many things that are out of your control. Like, the management team could, do something stupid or do something crazy, or the CEO could die, and, for whatever reason, the chart does something unexpected, right? We have to sort of accept that and just try and manage as much as possible. But the standard play would be something like this, and then you'll probably have one more pullback and then push on again. And I'll show you an example of that on the ADA chart. Is usually the one that I like to use. And I already have it drawn up, actually, but I think this is a really good example of what it generally looks like. So potentially at the moment on Axie, we're around this area here, and we've maybe even just had that little pump there. It almost looks exactly the same. So sort of expecting it to roll over and a little bit more bleed out until we sweep the range low, right? This swept the range low on the COVID dump, but this would have been a decent entry point as well for that rally up there. But a lot of the time on these altcoins, I'll usually wait until I see them getting close to breaking out of the range high, or a flip of the range high on the sign of strength. Because you can see after this gets out of this range through here, like, if you try and snipe the very bottom of the entry down here, like, yeah, that's great. But you don't have to do that on every single coin, because looking at ADA back here, you can see, like, when it goes to its next cycle, like, there's, even if you got in really late at the top, there's still heaps of potential upside that you could have got, right? So don't stress. I think a lot of people stress, like, really hard trying to catch the very, very bottom, but realistically, you just want to be playing with the whales and get in somewhere through that accumulation period. Alluvium, same sort of thing, right? I mean, it looks the same as this ADA chart. right? So be looking for something like that. Try and get into the bottom here. I think Alluvium's a really good project as well. You
Yeah.
know the guys a little bit, don't you, Alex?
Yeah, it's Kane from Synthetics, his brother. Do you have a look at the weekly? This is like a lot of these are just so beat up now, well down over 90% still. So as you just made the point before, you don't have to necessarily catch the bottom. What was that at?
Right,
Nearly
look at
$2,000 down to $40. So yeah, if you did the right thing and took some profits, and it's high time to start accumulating again, as Kyle said.
So yeah, back to a new all-time high is 4,300%. So I mean, it's never promised a new all-time high, but I would expect it at least comes up to this weekly. Whoops, excuse me. I would expect it at least comes up to this weekly through here. Sometimes with older altcoins and stuff like that, they don't ever reach their all-time high previously because as they develop and the cycle goes on a little bit more, people get a better understanding of actually how much money they're going to make, and it's not as not as good as what the hype was. So they don't reach those highs again. But at least this level here or this level here, right, eventually for the next cycle. Could end up doing something like that. If it's a weak cycle, I mean, if it goes back to all-time high. But I think right now, the time of the cycle that we're in, we want to be sort of accumulating the strong coins through these lows. And then, you're sort of like taking profit slowly over the cycle as we pump, post-halving into the end of 2024, 2025, whenever alt season mania happens and we're slowly getting out of these coins. And I like to leave just a little bit of runners in case it does go to all-time high. But, maybe at this point and this point here, generally out a fair bit.
Do you want to have a quick look at Mana and Magic, a couple of other requests we got, and then we might talk a little bit about Litecoin and Bitcoin?
So Magic's had a fair pullback. That's just there on the weekly. But this is a newer coin, only been out since the end of 2022. I think it came out in December on Binance anyway. But it looks like it's had a mini cycle. But it looks like one of the pumps that you sort of have that end up just looking like this on the chart later on. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you've seen so many.
Yeah, this is one that we covered pretty early on as well. I think a lot of people did pretty well out of this, and now it's had a retrace. So if the market's setting up to go again, it's probably setting up for new all-time highs.
Yeah, so I mean, it only had a 350% run. This is one of the ones that's on Arbitrum, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
It was one of the gaming ones on Optimism and maybe Arbitrum as well now, I think.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this one's a little bit trickier. Of course, we could wait for it to maybe lose this level and reclaim it. And then, the next thing I'd be looking for is a break of this level through here. Sometimes on altcoins, trying to get in on like a RSI bullish divergence or something like that isn't as... it can just put in like divergence after divergence, just continue to bleed out until, Ethereum and Bitcoin make their move and, you have dominance start to fade a little bit on BTC, then they start going crazy. But all through these pumps through here, it was really outperforming BTC. So it's not promised that it will next time Bitcoin runs again, but it's definitely one to keep our eyes on for sure, in my opinion. What was the other one, Sand?
Sand and Mana.
This had a really big pump actually at the end of 21. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, this is just the same. Like, we're just sort of like in this accumulation zone at the moment. It's hard to tell if that's the range high and this is the mid range or if this is going to be the range high. But for this one, to be honest, I'd be looking for an entry. I think this one is a bit of an easy one. I'd be looking for an entry like that.
Either way, even for long,
something like ADA did, I reckon probably do something like this, right? Maybe we have an onward dump and then.
Yeah, and for a lot of our guys that are longer term investors, again, just dollar cost averaging in over the next few weeks. If you believe in this longer term, you zoom right back out, and that, there's people doing that, and that's where you see these key old levels, coming into play and grinding sideways as people literally reaccumulate.
Yeah, and then you just take some profit here, and then you take some profit here. and then up here, and then you just let some run to see if it goes into, price discovery and does something like, runs to $34 or something like that in the next cycle. But obviously that has a lot of different factors have to come into play for that, and the project has to develop a lot. But how many times have we seen that same play over and over again? So
Mana, MANA.
Yep. So this is the virtual reality.
Decentraland.
You had a Nugget News.
We did have an education centre in there. I honestly haven't even checked if it's still there, to be honest.
Decentraland.
Yes.
So yeah, this had the crazy pump with the other VR things like sand and stuff as well. 650%. This has been a great one. I've traded this so many times over the years, but yeah, I mean, it's the same deal. Like I said earlier, like a lot of altcoins, in very, very same sort of, areas at the moment of their chart. So what I look for is a little key low like this one down here is going to be important. You can see that we've just come back and we've just retested that. So I want to see if that can hold. You can look at the wick as well, and because that will be a point of interest, but also the close I usually find is actually more important. So this could end up holding here, or it's going to be like the others and you get a bleed out and sweep of this low, and then it comes back up. So this one has a little bit of a trend line through here as well, which could be interesting to note. And you can sometimes get a nice trade when these take a little while to curl back around and then break out of a downtrend like this. They can pop up back to the range highs through here. But I would expect this probably to pop up, sweep the range high of this level here, and then probably have another pullback, right? So if you need to have a look at what, to expect in these cycles, go back to the ADA chart that I showed you guys before, ADA USDT on Binance, and, it'll probably end up being fairly similar to that, how it plays out over the next, year and a half until we get the post-halving altcoin cycle when, these things finally break out of the range highs and then they pop. But usually when they do break out a range high, you get a pullback or you get some sort of a bull flag that gives you the late entry. But, typically you want to be getting in the bottom half of the accumulation range, right? So anywhere through here. A little trick to help you guys with that if you want to, where is this tool? Right, it's the parallel channel, right? So you can just draw that in there like that, and it gives you the midline. And then you get another one, and you draw it in through the midline again, then pull it to the bottom, right? And then that's going to give you the bottom quarter. And so you sort of aim to average in the bottom quarter of the range, because then if it does roll over and it goes down to like new lows or something like that, and you're a longer term investor, at least you've got it in low, and then it reclaims the range finally, you're back in profit a lot faster.
Cool. We'll just have a look at Litecoin, Bitcoin, and then we'll wrap things up. But from the fundamental side of things, one thing we spoke about in the group when Bitcoin and ordinals and stamps started to take off was that chain congestion. And last time this happened, Litecoin started to outperform Bitcoin as people look for these other chains that they can get their coins off exchanges. We saw Binance halt Bitcoin withdrawals, for example. So people go, what else is out there decentralized, stood the test of time, and it's trusted. And that was one of the catalysts for Litecoin. Litecoin's halving is only a couple of months away now.
Yeah, so that's the yellow line that I've got on the chart here. So yeah, it's going to be on the 6th or the 7th of August. So yeah, that's one to watch out for. The previous halving was back, if the chart will load in. I don't have it drawn in. I can't remember where it was, or maybe I do.
Should be 4 years ago from August 23. What's that? August 19.
August 19. I think that's... Yeah, here we go. So this was the previous halving. I do have a chart with it on the Litecoin BTC chart. I'll get that up in a sec. But yeah, it had a really nice run actually with Bitcoin in this time of the cycle. So it was, Bitcoin had its accumulation zone, which we pretty much just broke out of. And this was what Litecoin did during that accumulation sort of followed it very closely, while things like Ethereum didn't. And after it broke out accumulation, it had a 250% pump, and the total move was about 500%, whereas Bitcoin moved about 300 and something, I think 350 in that move, right? So Litecoin actually outperformed BTC. I'll show you guys on this chart here. So this is the Litecoin BTC chart. So let me go out onto a higher time frame. So this was, no, where is it? Let me go back 2000. Yeah, so it was back here. It sort of started around the same time Bitcoin sort of bottomed. So as soon as BTC bottomed, which was at the end of 2018, you can see Litecoin just took over in that part of the rally, right? And it actually outperformed BTC by 170%. And then it was a few months later, actually, that the rally sort of kicked in, and it almost did a full retrace versus Bitcoin by the time the Litecoin halving kicked in, which was, I'm pretty sure, around the 6th of August in 2019, which is exactly 4 years from the current one, right? But we haven't really seen that same sort of action. We did have this rally through here, and about an 88% outperformance, and around from June all the way up, it's about 185%. So it's not really like, this was obviously a much bigger move back here, but on the chart, it's sort of potentially, we've already put in that 185 versus 176. So the previous move back here was bigger. It's just that, on the chart, it doesn't look as big because, the prices are so much smaller than what they were when we're up here. So it's something to think about. That perhaps Litecoin has already had its pre-halving move, but like we were looking at before on this chart back here, it is potentially forming a ascending triangle, right? So this could end up playing out like this and rallying into the halving, and then having a little bit of a pullback before the halving kicks in as the excitement sort of dies out. So I think, it definitely can run up to 132 or 150. It really just depends if, the Litecoin whales get behind it this time and pump it. Typically, the major purpose of Litecoin is just to create more Bitcoin for the whales. But I have heard that a lot of people these days are actually using Litecoin. The blockchain has a lot of activity on it. I don't know much, but maybe you have more info on that than me.
Yeah, no, I read that as well the other day. I'll stop the screen share now. Number of active addresses and wallet creation and transactions are all actually going up as we saw that chain congestion. So it's good to know when there's something fundamental finally happening. And I guess with a lot of these, Litecoin's always been a test bed for Bitcoin upgrades, but with the ordinals and the stamps and all these NFTs on Bitcoin, I think there's scope there for Litecoin to come in and say, hey, let's sort of have some sort of cross-chain where you can do this and it'll still function, like a side chain to Bitcoin. I think this, even if they end up doing on the Lightning Network and the Litecoin Lightning Network and the Bitcoin Lightning Network are compatible. So that's what I'm getting at there. Maybe that can free up some of the load for these NFTs as well as transactions. So I think that's a possible bull catalyst. And if that happened, I reckon you would see Litecoin pump pretty hard if the news came out, well, we can do these NFTs and free up Bitcoin, something along those lines, or just serve as a test bed for some of the new technologies they want to roll out on Bitcoin to see if we could help free up the load. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Could be cool. Well, hopefully the Litecoin Foundation gets their act together and they make something happen. But I think it looks good if the price can get above $100, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for the questions as always. We'll continue to do this every month. Looking forward to launching the new platform as well. Hopefully only a couple of weeks away. I've been told by the devs that are building that out to sign up and have all the structured research and portfolios and education in there, which is exciting as well. Kyle, any final thoughts?
No, that's pretty much it. We didn't really cover off Bitcoin, but I think it's pretty simple at the moment. There's that key level on the chart at the moment, which is 26,500. If it can hold that, I think it could continue to rally with the NASDAQ, for example, and maybe Bitcoin, is lagging a little bit and it catches up. once Jump and Jane Street finished dumping all their spot coins.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from that, I think that's the main thing that I'm watching at the moment. Is Bitcoin going to hold 26,500 or are we going to come back to 25k? So.
Yeah, and just for those asking, Bitcoin halving still a year away exactly. So I think that at the moment the spotlight is on these meme coins, what's going to be the next themes, and elsewhere. So the Bitcoin halving spotlight isn't quite there yet.
Awesome.
Cool.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, mate. Thanks everyone for the questions, and we'll do this again soon. Cheers.
See you guys.